I'm your host, Mike Davis, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the markets rallying on a Fed pivot. We're going to be breaking down why this news is coming out and how markets are reacting in a very bullish way to this news. And the news of the day is a possibility of the Fed pivoting. Now, I know this is not Groundhog's Day. We've been here. We've heard this before. Back in June, July, when we saw inflation inflect to the downside, we talked about the Fed was discussing a possibility of starting to pivot and maybe lower interest rates, but that was followed by inflation inflecting back to the upside. So we all need to take this with a grain of salt, but we are hearing rumblings right here, right now, that the Fed is possibly talking about pivoting and stopping to raise interest rates at an increasing rate like they have been doing, with seamlessly a 75 basis point every single time. We'll be discussing that and much, much more in today's video. But before we do, make sure you sit back, you relax, you enjoy today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you leave your thoughts and comments down below. With that being said, let's jump right into the story of the day. And stocks spike after Wall Street Journal Fed whisperer hints at a possible pause/pivot coming out of the Fed, and the markets rallied behind this news today. So the news has set the narrative once again this morning, writing while a 75 basis point is a done deal for November, which has already been priced in and known by the market, the FOMC discussion will be a critical staging ground. The potential step down to 50 basis points in December would be massive. So you can see the Fed is barreling towards a 4 straight 75 basis point raise at November FOMC meeting. That meeting could serve as a critical staging ground for the future plans, including how to step down to 50 basis points in December or even less. So now we are starting to hear that the Fed is possibly talking about pivoting and coming down on the interest rates and stop raising at an increasingly high rate. But will this happen? Well, we will have to wait and see. But markets are taking this and rallying behind this news. Simply put, explains that the Fed officials want to discuss a slowing of the velocity of rate hikes. This is incredibly bullish for the markets to hear, to 50 basis points in December from 75 basis points, without triggering a stock market melt-up, a subsequent easing of financial conditions. So a report is strong one meant to shake out the intentional reactions and build the narrative that a 50-point basis point is still a significant hike. So you can already see that this news is coming out today, and this is basically kind of the way of the Fed of sending a narrative and a message to the markets of what could be coming in the future. As we know, the markets are forward-looking, and the markets are taking this and running with this news of a possibility of not just a rate hike drop, but just a little bit of a pivot to slowing the rate of increasing these interest rates from 75 basis point in November to possibly 50 basis points in December. This is a way of the Fed to kind of adjust the market, to kind of spoon feed the market some news, see how they react to it. But we need to take this one day at a time, because we have not seen any type of news or data inflect enough to the downside to tell us that the Fed is in a position to pivot here. No matter what you want to hear or read about midterm elections, the Fed is stuck between a rock and a hard place and cannot pivot or pause until we see an inflection to the downside, a strong inflection to the downside of inflation, or they will lose the credibility that they've been trying so hard to bring back to the light. So we're also seeing that right here, right now, the Fed's daily, we will perform a step down, but not a pause to 50 or 25 basis point increments. So you're starting to see this narrative really get pushed out by the Fed and the makers and the policymakers behind this. This is how they are trying to choose the market and to tell the market what direction they want to see. And in my opinion, this is a way of really getting some bullishness back into the market. I don't believe that this was a leaked event. I believe this was a staged event by the Fed to let the markets know that there is a possibility of a rate drop from 75 basis point in November that's pretty much 100% locked in to possibly 50 or 25 in December. While it's not a pause, it's not a complete pause, it is a pivot to the downside. It's slowing the velocity of raising interest rates, which is bullish for the markets, as the markets are always forward looking. However, we are seeing that this is another article that came out, wants to avoid unforced downturn by over-tightening. This is what the Fed is trying to tell the markets. September SEP summary is a good indication of where things are looking. Rental price inflation is starting to slow. Need to do everything in our power to not over-tighten. More tightening is needed. Now we are in the stage of policy where we need to be thoughtful. Fed getting to 4.5 to 5% next year is reasonable. So you're starting to see this narrative really get pushed into the markets. This is not by a mistake. This is how the Fed likes to help the markets move in the direction they want to see them move. It's the same way that they came out with negative news to move the markets. Now they're coming out with a possible bullish case to really move the markets to the upside, to see some relief, to see some gains come back in the market, and the markets are taking this news and absolutely running it, with the Dow up 755 points, the S&P up almost 90 points, and the NASDAQ up 270 points on a Friday. A great close to a rough week, but we are starting to see this narrative really get priced into the markets. But you need to take this with a grain of salt. While there's a lot of bullishness right now, there's a lot of green coming in the market, this is all basically from whispers and a possibility of what could happen to the Fed, but we have not seen any type of real data, inflation inflecting enough to the downside to really see this being reasonable. I believe that this is a position from the Fed to try to bring some relief to the markets, but you need to be very, very cautious. We are still in the mix of a massive turmoil on a global recession, and we are still in a massive downturn, and the trend is your friend until the end. And we're also seeing this news coinciding with a massive sell-off in the dollar. We saw the dollar spike up to 114 this morning. Before this news was leaked, the news gets leaked, we see a massive rally in the market, and we see a massive decline in the US DXY account here as well. So going from 114 to under 112, and markets rallying from red to green. This by me was no mistake by the Fed. It was a position for the Fed to leak some information to really bring a relief back to the market. I want to know your thoughts and opinions. Are you taking this with a grain of salt, or is this the move that you've been waiting for to redeploy into the market? Could we see a sustained relief rally inside the markets, or do you believe that this is again the Fed trying to move the markets, and that we are going to get slammed back to the downside with higher inflation and more tightening needed by the Federal Reserve? Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. Thank you for tuning in to Financial Freedom, the channel that breaks down anything and everything that you need to know to stay one step ahead and navigate your way through this market. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you guys on the